And I think, Joshua, you asked me maybe to tell you the story of why I ever ended up in Kandersteg. So I was scouting in the north of England near Liverpool. My parents live between Chester and Liverpool on the Wirral, and had done many interesting adventures as a scout, and really I was one of 6 children, and we not all of us were heavily involved, but I was probably as heavily involved as my eldest brother. As a venture scout, aged 18, we climbed Mont Blanc and we reached the summit of Mont Blanc. So lots and lots of things. And I was doing a job which I completed after about 5 years and decided I wanted to do a bit of traveling. I hadn't done traveling between university and getting a job. And I decided to go and see some places and of course connect up with scouting and so on. And between one of those trips, I was in a timber yard in, I think it was in Birkenhead, if I'm right, which is just across from Liverpool. And I was just loading this timber on the car, which I'd bought. And this person who was helping me said, "How long have you been in scouting?" And I said, "Well, how do you know I'm in scouting?" He said, "You're wearing a scout belt." And that person was Steve. If I'm right, it was Birkenhead. Is that right, Steve, if I remember rightly?
320 New Chester Road.
There you are, you see, he knows better than me. And I said, "Oh, I'm doing a little bit of work for my dad, but I'm also traveling and I wanted to do some things." And he said, "You should go to Kandersteg." And I had never heard of Kandersteg at that time. Kandersteg has absolutely changed my life. And it was a chance encounter, a chance conversation. And the winter, I think it was 1989 summer that I was in that timber yard. And in the winter, I was a volunteer working in the laundry and in the shop for a season. It was a superb time, one of the best times of my life as a volunteer at Kandersteg. And as I came to the end of my volunteer season, the director there asked me to come back after the summer, and he wanted me to come back as the assistant director, which I did for 2 years, and then I became the director for 4 years. And everything since has all revolved around my time in Kandersteg and what I learned. And then just a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to return and to become chair of the committee. So it sort of goes full circle. My children were all born long after I left Kandersteg, but when we go back, they're treated like locals. It's the most wonderful place. So Kandersteg is very, very dear to my heart. And thanks to a chance conversation with Steve, I mean, absolutely amazing to me. And what a wonderful opportunity that we're on this call together, Steve. We had a brief conversation when I was working in Abu Dhabi and you were in Bahrain, but we didn't manage to meet up, but it's good to see you on this call.
Yeah, it is. It's 30 years since we've last sat face to face. So
yeah, 30 years in that timber yard. Very, very good.
And I believe you took the train across because one of my other good friends who I'd sent off on something else, I was on the staff of the American National Jamboree with a guy called David McGee, who ended up as European director. And he tells me a story that he was on the train with you to Kandersteg that day, and he met this guy called Aidan and ended up talking about the guy from the timber yard, because he'd just been to America with me on the American Jamboree staff.
Yeah, so David McKee became the regional director, and then subsequently, most recently, before I went to Abu Dhabi, I was the chief operating officer in Geneva. But I was also working in the European region, director of finance, so Brussels and Geneva. So Kandersteg absolutely changed my life. So and actually, I said in every job I've done since, I've said I still use things I learned during my time in Kandersteg, and that's absolutely true. Anyway. Enough about me. Let me, can I do a share screen and do a little PowerPoint presentation if I can get it right? Just hold with me a minute and sort of update you to where we are, because as we are in many parts of the world, in very interesting times. Kandersteg is no different to many parts of the country and many parts of the world, and we have our own challenges, but also many opportunities as well. Let me see how I change a slide. It doesn't like that slide business. Okay, hold on. There we go. This is its origins are back to when Baden-Powell came to Kandersteg in the time of the Chief Scout of Switzerland, Walter von Bonstetten. And so he's right back at the very beginning of when we started things. And this picture here shows the regional chalet, which still exists, albeit looks a little bit different, but the shape and the outline of the chalet is the same, and actually was built as a temporary building as part of the buildings that were put up as part of the construction of the tunnel, the Lutschberg tunnel, which goes through the campsite and sort of enters and comes out at the other side, effectively into Goppenstein, and goes on eventually on to Milan. So where Scouts and Guides can meet year round, live together in peace and learn from each other. And it's since 1923 we've been there. And it is the World Scout Centre, acknowledged by the World Organization of the Scout Movement. And we talk about the environment, our alpine environment, which is very special at 1,200 meters height, raising awareness of global issues and living Baden-Powell's dream. There we are. What I like about this little map is it places Kandersteg pretty much right in the center of the world. Now, it depends which way you show your map, but it's a really nice position to be right bang in the center there. And that gives us a nice perspective on how things are across the world, of course. Here's our committee. We're quite a large committee. We have 6 representatives from national scout organizations. We have 4, and they are nominated and then elected. We have 4 positions which are nominated by the organizations, and that's the World Organization of the Scout Movement, the European Scout Committee, the Swiss Scout Association, and then an organization called the Swiss Scout Homes Foundation. They own one of the buildings on the Kandersteg estate, and so we've always had a long relationship with us. And that's 6 and 4, and then another 6 individual members who are elected from the membership. So quite a large group, and we're elected for a period of 4 years, and then stand for election at what we call our General Assembly, which is like an annual general meeting, but it happens every 2 years. So this is, Eliane is the vice chair here. She's from Switzerland. And Stefan, if I can find Stefan, I just don't see him now. Where's Stefan gone? Oh, he's behind the Skype thing at the end here. He's chairman of our steering committee, which is, if you like, our smaller committee, which is mainly Swiss representatives who do the work in between the main committee meetings. It was actually in 1989 that we sort of moved from various colors of staff sweatshirt to a pink color. And the origin, so it was actually, I think, the first graduation, when somebody comes as a volunteer and has done their training and receives the Kandersteg sweatshirt, we call that the graduation. And I think it was the first the graduation in December 1989, which was my actual graduation, where we first started using the pink color. And there were 2 aspects to that. I think we had red t-shirts before, but when you were on the site, you know, other people could be wearing red t-shirts, but people didn't tend to wear pink t-shirts or pink sweatshirts very much. And 2 aspects of that. One meant is that you could identify a staff member more easily. And secondly, the companies who were making these used to find they didn't sell very many, so we could buy them cheap until the next one tried them and it didn't work. And so the shade always changes very slightly, but it subsequently became known as the Pinkies, which is the staff team that operate the site year round. And that's a mixture of, firstly, the volunteer teams, which commit to 3 months, a full season. And each season has its very particular characteristics. So obviously the winter season, my first season was obviously about the snow adventure, about all the things that happen, whether it's cross-country skiing or downhill skiing, and all of the activities you do in winter. The spring season is obviously preparing for the summer, so a lot of maintenance and a lot of getting campsites ready and so on. summer season, the big season where you have the bulk of the activity and people coming and all the alpine activities and on-site activities. And then the autumn season, which sort of winds down and heads us towards the start of the winter season. And actually, I've always found the winter season is the one, the autumn season is the one I tend to enjoy most, or I tended to enjoy most. It was the time when the madness of summer had passed, when the colours were changing on the trees, when the village was quieting down. Towards the end of it, it gets very quiet before we open in the winter season. But it has a sort of peacefulness about it, which I like very much indeed. And so I always enjoyed that. So that's the bulk of the staffing. They come on these 3-month allocations for 4 times a year. So in my time, I did 24 different seasons, 4 seasons a year for 6 years. And the calculation of staff I once did, I think it was 300 and something over that period. So a lot of people. Then we have some people who are a bit longer, which is usually some period of most of the year, between 4 and 12 months. We call them long-term staff. And they're doing most of the seasons in a year. Depends a little bit about the work permits, because that's one of the restricting factors. And then the senior management team that tend to be there over a period of 3 years as well. So that's how we run the centre, with that sort of structure. And the committee is normally meeting, well, it's changed recently in COVID times, because we've been meeting for briefings and discussions much more often. But normally we're there as a full committee in the spring, and again in the towards the end of the summer, and then in November-ish, that sort of time. So 3 times a year.
Aidan, what's the age to be able to serve on staff? The range?
It's basically 18 and above, and it's to be a member of a Scout or Guide organisation, and really being able to be in Kandersteg. It's a very straightforward requirement in that sense. Not at all complicated. And you know, the people who've done it, be it for a 1 3-month season or for a longer period, you know, it's so often the reflections, you know, I've been giving opportunities that my regular life just doesn't offer. I mean, all of these resonate with me, because I get this fully, and it's such a delight when people go away changed and retain a link to Kandersteg for the rest of their lives. I remember one time it was in the autumn season, and this lady arrived, and we always tried to, particularly in the low season, if people came to visit, we always tried to give them some time and so on. And she said, my husband died last year, and but he always spoke about Kandersteg, how he came here as a young boy, and I wanted to come and see it. So I said, oh, shall we take a walk around? I'll tell you some things. And she said, you have time? Yeah, I said, of course I have time. So we walk around, showed her the campsite, showed her the places. And then I said, would you like that we have a look and see if we can find the visitor book with your husband's scout group in? And so we did. And she knew the year and she knew the month, and we found it. We found the entry for the scout group of her husband, and she was obviously very moved and so on. And I said, would you like me to make a large copy of this on the photocopier? Oh, would you? Yeah. So I made this copy. Honestly, she took it away as if it was a bag of gold. It was so special for her. And to me, that sort of, she even ended up writing to my parents, and my mother was saying, who's writing to me? What's this about? I said, somebody who is connected to Kandersteg, never been here before, but was connected. And those stories exist all the time because people get a connection. And I think connection is so important, and human connections are so important. So really, really valuable to what we do, and at the core and heart of what we do. So the centre today, or as the director, when he gave me these slides, you know, a normal year, shall we say, we would expect at least 60 nationalities throughout the year, around about 80,000 nights spent in Kandersteg Scout Centre, and around about 14,000 guests during the course of the year. And the bulk of it is in the summertime, but it is throughout the year, every day open. So almost always there is somebody there from several nationalities there at any one time. Sorry, I just got one slide on the program activities because it's, if I show the program activity slides, there's probably 10 slides there. We've obviously got the alpine environment and all that entails, but we've also got lots of other activities around the site, around activities around environment, in activities around international friendship. So lots and lots of activities in our program, which is so core, again, to what we do. If we move to just very recent times, this is, I'm sure this will not surprise you at all. This is the trajectory since a year or so with the pandemic hitting. And we've actually more or less for this year done a form of mothballing of the centre. We decided at our meeting in January that we were having to reduce our costs down to a minimum and put things on hold. So we don't expect to have huge numbers in 2021 at all. At the end of 2020, we had a significant financial loss, and we have obviously a forecast loss in this year as well. So that's really tough for us. We refunded groups. We also transferred bookings for groups. So we've got now the possibility that next year becomes a very difficult year to manage because we've got to accommodate a great demand, a sort of pent-up demand. We've reached out to many of our suppliers locally and across the canton of Bern, looking for them to help us and be part of the solution. But of course, everybody, every company, every organization, every charity is suffering. So we're reaching out to people who also have their own issues. And we've also had a fantastic response from people who want to join. And that helps us because they pay a membership fee, but it also helps us because it's an emotional boost. People are saying, we're with you at this time, and we want to be part of the membership of Kandersteg. So that's really encouraging for us as we meet the challenges head on at this phase. And 2020 in numbers, I did the overnights before, looks kind of different to what we're used to, 140 litres of disinfectant, 4,100 face masks and 6,500 disposable gloves. Just something about what we did during the 2020 period in terms of protecting Kandersteg from COVID. So in 2021, at the beginning of the year, in January, we decided to do this minimize operations issue, which is really a form of mothballing, I guess. And we're ramping up our activity on online program and getting quite a lot of response to that. We've reduced the staff team to just four and a half positions. So very, very skeleton staff for the size of the operation. And we're working hard. We've got a committee briefing tomorrow to talk about all of this, working hard to mitigate the negative result for 2021 that we're currently forecasting. Now, this has all come at a time when we're just heading towards our centenary. So when this time last year, or even a bit before, we were quite advanced with our thinking about what will we do in 2023 to mark the 100 years of Kandersteg or Kandersteg Scout Centre, and to look forward to the next 100 years. And of course, in the last year, it's been very difficult to do very much at all to progress that. So we are still focused on celebrating our centenary in 2023. We're just facing a shorter time frame and a more challenging environment. So we want to celebrate across the board, and that's our guests, our current staff, ex-staff, members, all the members of our association, our partners, sponsors, and our local people in Kandersteg who we've got such a good relationship with. But also quite critically, we want to find ways to reach more widely into the Swiss political system to get greater support in the longer term. So an example of that would be, getting our work permits is quite tricky. So if we can get a better understanding and comprehension of what we do, and one of the great things about something like a centenary is you get the spotlight, and therefore you can use the opportunity to give messages and inform people. So that's also something quite important for us as well. And then if we move on to our aims, this is the summary of what we're trying to achieve and what we'll measure ourselves by. Of course, we want to celebrate where we've been, and that's a part of what we want, but we don't want to just celebrate the past. We want to look forward. We want to bring thousands of Scouts and Guides to Kandersteg. We want to celebrate our achievements through the past 100 years. We're really keen. We engage with a core of National Scout organizations, which is probably 60, possibly 70 or 80. But we're really keen to try to engage with every Scout national organization in the world. And obviously, that won't necessarily be in a physical presence in Kandersteg, but we could be connecting through the internet or through messages on our website, and I think that's really important for us. Membership growth, that's really important. We engage with more people who stay with us on the journey. If they can't come to Kandersteg, they stay as a member, they get information, they can connect, and of course they can pay their annual membership fee, which is very helpful to us. And of course, absolutely critical, it's the springboard for our next 100 years. We need to look forward. We need to come out of a great 100 years, come out of the most recent couple of years where we've had this awful pandemic, and look forward to another 100 years of Kandersteg, which I think it will be not a time when I'm chairing the organization, but somebody else will be there to celebrate 200 years in another 100 years time. So we'll do stuff through the entire year. We'll start right at the very beginning when the new year comes in Kandersteg, and that will be the launch of our centenary year. And some of the key elements is we will have the 12th of February when the KISC Association was founded, and we have a centenary weekend, and then carrying on through the year, we have our major event in the summer, Kander 100. Which is a jamboree style event. We always bridge, if we can, with an event like that, 1st of August, which is Swiss National Day. It's a big day in Switzerland, so that's a real good connection for us. And then we'll be coming through through the full circle through the New Year's celebrations to close the year. And we're looking for the World Scout Committee to be meeting in Kandersteg at some point during the year. So there we are. That's my run through of where Kandersteg stands today, and sort of some of you will have known some of that. Hopefully some of you will have some new comprehension about what we're about. But I'm really happy to answer questions or have a discussion about anything that you think is relevant or pertinent. Really throw the floor open to questions and comments.
Thanks, Aidan. As you know, Transatlantic Council has a kind of a long history with Kandersteg, even from my time. And it's funny, as you were talking, I was looking at my wall, and you can't see it here, but I have things from Kandersteg, and I'll show you here. Before Transatlantic Council, or in the old days, we had a number of districts. I think it was up to 12. And the district that was involved in going to Kandersteg frequently was Alpine District, which included southern Germany and Switzerland.
Yes.
And so these are back from 1989. We had our Klondike Derby there every year, basically.
Yep.
We had Klondike in 1988. You can see. And then we had our Order of the Arrow events there as well, way back when.
That's right, yeah.
And so nowadays, Alpine District doesn't exist anymore. We have different districts, but Transatlantic Council still has two major events there. We have the Klondike Derby, usually in January, and then we have Camp Alpine, they call it now, in the summertime, which unfortunately this year, because of COVID, had to be canceled, but we still come at least twice a year, sometimes even more frequently. And so I wanted to give this opportunity for the committee members to ask any questions you may have about Kandersteg, either the current state of affairs, which Aidan kind of highlighted already, or just the future. Any Aidan?
Remember in my winter season, the Klondike Derby, which was absolutely phenomenal. And if memory serves me right, it was somebody called Ross Kiddy who used to bring the group out in that time. And I think they were coming out of Heidelberg mainly, or one of the major centers of Heidelberg.
Yeah, it was Heidelberg, which is where I lived, and Ross Kiddy actually lived about 15 homes down the road, down the street. So I know Ross Kitty very well. His son graduated with me. I have a feeling that when I was there in the late 80s, you and I probably connected and we just didn't know it.
I guess so. Yeah. That was phenomenal. So,
Steve,